Welcome to The Human Factor, the video podcast of Inc. and Fast Company. I'm Eric Schoenberg, the CEO of Inc. and Fast Company. One of the great things about being at Inc. or Fast Company is that you get to meet the unicorns of tomorrow when they are still yearlings. When I met Ragy Thomas, the founder and CEO of Sprinklr, I have to confess I didn't entirely get Ragy's grand vision for an entirely new tech category called customer experience management. I did understand that I had met an entrepreneur with an inspirational story and a unique focus on the importance of the human factor in growing his company. I figured I'd hear from him again, and I have, and so have many others. Sprinklr is not a household name, but it has won a great many household names as clients, including 50% of the Fortune 100. Sprinklr went public in June, and soon after, it hit a peak valuation over $5 billion. So maybe I didn't get it at first, but lots of others did. Welcome, Ragy Thomas.
Thank you, Eric.
Ragy, it's great to have you here. Now, where are you calling in from?
I'm in my house in New Jersey, about 40 miles south of the city.
New Jersey, a great state, one I call home. Very underrated, I think, but that's good. Keeps the riffraff out. Now, you were born and raised not in New Jersey, but in India. Looking back on your family and your upbringing there, was there anything about it that kind of led you, in retrospect, to think that it sparked the entrepreneurial embers inside you? Anything about your upbringing that led you here?
Well, I'd like to say that I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. In fact, I come from an anti-entrepreneurial family. My dad's a retired professor, and my mom used to work for the government. And we have in the family, most folks end up being teachers, professors, doctors, or engineers, and so a lot of professional working. No business in the family at all. And my parents, because of maybe their upbringing, they used to look down on people starting businesses and doing something. And the only person in our entire extended family that did any business was one of my uncles who had his own store, and he wasn't doing that very well. But generally, based on that, when you start a business, my parents understood it as you buy something for X and you sell it for something that's higher than X, and they're like, "Oh, you are cheating people. You're making money, not doing much." So it's something that it wasn't in my genes, and it was a very interesting journey to be where I am today.
That's interesting. I imagine they've changed their tune.
Yeah, I think so. I like to think so.
You got your MBA, so you left India. You got your MBA at New York University. What inspired you to leave India and come to the U.S.?
It wasn't quite an inspired event because what happened was I got recruited out of college, my undergrad, and by a company that sent me here on a job assignment, and that's how I ended up. I showed up in Wisconsin, in Brown Deer, Wisconsin, a little small town near Milwaukee, in the middle of winter, and so it wasn't very planned.
Would you, considering how your career has gone, would you encourage a young Ragy Thomas to move to the U.S. from India, or do you think things have changed in the balance between the two countries?
Look, I've always thought that I've just gone along with where life took me, and generally I'm scared to lose. I'm really, really afraid of failing. And I've been, I had growing up, I spent a few years in Nigeria as my parents were traveling and working there. Um, and I've grown up because I've been in different countries and cities growing up, and I've traveled. I I have this notion that we're a village of 7 billion people, and you've just got to live life, and where you are is really not what makes you happy or controls life. It's how you approach it. I've enjoyed my life as the way it's folded. This is home. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I love this country.
Let's double click on the fear of failure, because it's become kind of a meme among founders and venture capitalists and so on that failure is part of entrepreneurship and that that's something you should embrace. Wear your failures on your sleeve. I've always been a little dubious about whether that was true. Um, it sounds like something that you don't embrace either. What's your feeling about failure?
Um, I I don't mind failing, but I don't like it. Let's be clear. To me, either you're winning or you're learning, and failure is the best teacher ever. It's hard to learn from success. I've said that success is like an Indian curry. Lots of ingredients go in, and every ingredient, every person, or everything thinks it's success is caused by that particular ingredient or person. Whereas
Yeah.
failure is very easy to learn from. Well, there was too much salt in the curry, and so um, I've I'm afraid to fail. I don't like failing. But whenever you fail, which inevitably you do, hundreds of times, you really have to enjoy the process of learning from it, and accept that it's inevitable.
Let's let's dig a little deeper on that. I think that's a particularly healthy way of looking at it. You're either winning or you're learning. Are there particular failures that you thought were crucial learning experiences in your career trajectory?
Yeah, so I routinely fail. For someone who's really afraid of failing, I fail so often that I'm so used to it. Um, you almost always fail when you start anything, and starting a business is no different. The key is always learning and adjusting. So for us, early days, losing clients, losing business was something that we constantly learned from. And when you tune your ears to just listen to customers and be driven by them, and we obsess about customers and their success at Sprinklr. And so everything, a customer leaving you or not understanding, appreciating your product is failure. And you constantly try to learn from it.
Um, Now, Sprinkler's not your first rodeo. You were, I believe, CTO at Bigfoot um, Interactive, which was acquired by Epsilon, a direct mail marketing company, where you also had high office. What did you learn from those experiences?
Well, I think I'm probably after starting companies, you become unemployable, and a part of you stops, refuses, and you lose the ability to take instructions that don't make sense to you. And that was my part of my learning experience. The other part is I realized how much fun it is to build with a group of people, and not have to worry about um, all the other BS that sometimes necessarily go with in a corporate job. And the other thing I learned was when you're starting a company, when you're small, you kind of tend to fantasize about when I get older, when the company becomes bigger. And for me, my previous journeys was such an example. I remember with the second startup we had, and we were small, and New York is notorious for buildings with really lousy elevators. And we were in a building that had one elevator. It was on top of a printing press, and you had to wait like 10 minutes sometimes to get on it. And so when we were small, I used to dream and fantasize about, hey, someday we'll have our own elevator. Someday we'll have our sign outside on the building. And all of that happened. And I realized sitting in an office that was bigger than our entire company's office when we started, um, walking out and seeing a lot of new faces and almost like every week, and realizing, man, it was so much more fun when we were all hustling side by side. And I realized that, it's super strange when you achieve your dream and realize that's not what you wanted.
Wow, that is really interesting. There was something you said earlier that resonated with me as the CEO of our company. You said that from your experiences as an employee, you really couldn't stand getting instructions that made no sense, and that led you to start out on your own. Do you ever worry now that you may be the leader that you didn't like when you were an employee, that you may be that now be the person who's giving instructions that other people don't quite understand or want to follow?
I try not to. I try not to, by just always trying to put myself in the shoes of the other person that I'm interacting with. I think it's important for leaders to be people who are empowering others. And in my own journey, it was a hard transition for me to go from a doer, someone who could try and create stuff and do stuff, and obsessed about getting better, and to transition to being a leader who had to just forget about doing. And I've said multiple times, and I routinely say that when I'm asked to introduce myself in company meetings, I'm the guy that's responsible for everything that goes wrong at Sprinklr. And everything that goes right is my fantastic team and people. And that sounds like a cliche statement, but in my brain, that's honestly and truthfully and sincerely how I think. And and that keeps me in check. And whenever you deal with someone and you're thinking outcomes, then you agree on an outcome with someone, and that's how I try to work with people at everything I do. um, Essentially having clarity on outcomes. The why and the what has to be very, very clear. And then that allows you to then, instead of giving instructions, step back and ask yourself, well, what do I need to do to empower and help this person? Because you're not getting in instructions, you have a shared understanding of what success is.
So your role as a leader is to set goals and not to do things. I think that's a very good philosophy, one that a lot of people have a hard time um, actually kind of realizing that as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you are by definition a doer, and yet you have to transition out of that to lead a large company. Was that hard for
Mhm.
you?
It was very, very hard. It was extremely hard. um, and but it was a necessary lesson, because again, um, most people, when they become successful because they're good at something and they learn how to do things, and you have to unlearn that, and you have to really become good at getting and helping others be better, uh, every day. It's a very, very tough lesson, and I see a lot of people who just don't make that transition, and they never become leaders, they become managers.
That is a really interesting point, and I have to say that one that I'm quite familiar with. After all, I'm doing a video podcast for Inc. and Fast Company, as well as being the CEO. So maybe I haven't completely made the transition myself. Um, Sprinkler started as a social media outsourcer for big businesses. That was, and part of the reason I guess I had wrapping my head around what your vision was for the company was that at the time was something that I didn't have a recognized need. I think. What gave you the idea for that, and what gave you the confidence to realize that maybe you had a company here?
Mhm. Um, I seek out patterns, and I think the beauty of life is when you find patterns that repeat over and over again, you can you can be reasonably sure that you're going to succeed. So my previous businesses have all been in email marketing. So I watched the world go from using direct mail as a channel. Businesses use direct mail as a channel and move to email. And we created a decently successful company by creating software to enable that transition. And in that process, we built entire communication platform for this one channel, which was email. Um, and to use a communication channel, businesses need audience, content, campaign, publishing, reporting, analytics, workflow, governance, collaboration, a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember when we were very early, this was, late 90s, early 2000. Um, and you and I both remember the days when you'd go out to fetch mail, and from your mailbox outside your house, and you'd come back with a stack like this big. It was a ritual, like going through them one by one. And you have um, every company hitting you up with offers and coupons and promotions, and with very, very large companies whose just entire job was direct mail execution. And companies like Capital One, the bank, I was once told that Capital One was given a special rate by the US Postmaster General because they were sending so much direct mail and they'd gotten it down to a science. And I remember once talking to the executives at Capital One early when we were doing my email company and explaining that email is going to be the future. And most things they're doing in direct mail should be done in email because consumers are already on email. And we all had our AOL addresses, if you remember, or Yahoo addresses back then. And I remember this executive very sincerely going, I don't see that, and explaining how email is very personal, and I don't think businesses people want emails from business. I'm like,
Yeah.
we didn't invent the phone to do telemarketing. We invented it to talk to each other and call your loved ones. So seeing something as a channel independently of how it originates is something that I experience in email. When I watch Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and they all take off back to back, it was obvious that we had reinvented communication. It was obvious that channels were going to proliferate. It was obvious that these channels are fundamentally different from email because they're connecting people to each other. It was obvious that, it's a question of time before billions of people get connected. And it was obvious that businesses were going to use it. So the big aha when I got started was, hey, I did this for email. I've got a 10-year head start on everyone on how to build it and scale it. Let me go build an operational platform for businesses to publish and respond and engage. What I didn't realize at that time, and I'm like, look, we can build another, 100. We sold our previous business for $120 million or so. So I was like, we can build another 100 million business out of this fairly confidently. And so I funded it with my own money. And we were off on our merry way. When a year into it, I realized, man, this appears to be really different because we had customers who were thinking they were posting marketing messages, and were forced to deal with people talking back at them, which they were not used to. When you're marketing, till that point, we are used to marketing out. And if you wanted to talk to me, you call 1-800 brand and you waited in line. And so when I post a coupon on Facebook and people come back and say, well, I had a problem with your product, blah, blah, suddenly they're scratching their head going, A, I need a different type of marketing stack. B, I need a different type of care stack because customers are not following any of my guidance on how to contact me. And C, they need to work together. And so we had this massive aha about a year and a half into starting the company, that made it very obvious that the world needed not a social media company, but what they needed was a completely new way to manage customer experiences, because there were more channels. And on these channels, people were putting out so much information, right? So you can know more about your customers than you ever did. And because they're talking to each other, they have symmetric information. In many cases, they've got more information about your products than you do, because they're real time connected to billions of other people. And so you need to start seeing all the silos that you saw in the past as a unified infrastructure. And so we bet the company on it. And that's when we raised some money and we said, man, it's not what it appears. This is going to be the biggest thing to come after CRM. It might take 10 or 15 years to build this out, like it took 15 years for ERP to emerge as a category. And if you
Yeah.
recall, SAP kept writing code through the 80s into the 90s. And once you saw your supply chain end to end, you couldn't go back to a piecemeal solution. So we started writing code now, 12 years of writing code against that vision. And we've got 31 products organized into functional suites: a marketing suite, a unified care suite, a unified research suite, a unified sales and engagement suite. But I think the unique thing is it's all one pure unified platform, purpose built from the ground up. And we're betting the company that on the fact that this is the only way for companies to make their customers happier and beat others out. And that's what we're pursuing. And we went from social to having building digital marketing, care, research, engagement stacks, and the platform. And we're at a time when people clearly realize that care has to be unified, and marketing has to be unified, and marketing advertising has to be unified. And we're quickly moving to people understanding that even marketing and care need to be unified. So we're seeing the market come to us and having a good time serving those customers.
Well, Raji, I don't know whether you've gotten better at explaining your vision, or whether I've just gotten smarter myself, but it sounds a lot clearer than it did to me whenever that was 8 years ago.
That's
I,
not you, Eric. It's me. I mean, the ability to say a unified platform for all customer-facing functions across channels. It took me 10 years to get that right. That's as
yeah,
simple as that.
well, all right, but I just remember it's one ring to rule them all. The creation of a whole new tech category is an ambitious goal. But there's another goal you have as a leader and as a CEO and visionary, which is to be the most loved company on earth. So, I mean, why not raise the bar really high? Um, loved, loved by whom?
Right. So not loved company. We want to create the world's most loved enterprise software company. So when you look at enterprise software as a category, I would urge you to think
Uh-huh.
about enterprise software companies that come to your mind. And then ask yourself, is love a word that you would associate with any of those companies?
No,
Now
no, it's
you'll
not.
understand the opportunity. I think this is probably how Tony Hsieh felt when he tried to do what he did with Zappos. God bless him. Um, and I think he realized, like, retail as a category never obsessed about making customers love them, because it was generally understood that unless you are in the luxury category, you had very thin margins, and customers necessarily had to pick expensive or better service. And he set out to create a company. Said, if I revolutionize that in my category, which was retail, we're going to win. And you saw what happened and how Amazon acquired them, and Amazon's culture reflects that. We have an opportunity to do that in enterprise software. Enterprise software is broken as a category, and we've created a culture where as a category where it's all about high pressure sales and tallest building and biggest signs and screaming hard. And I think the category deserves a different type of leadership, a company that's obsessed about customers and celebrates them and just worries about making the product better in something that's going to be very, very strategically important for them. So that's what we're trying to do. And it's not about the others. We want to create a company where when we wake up and we talk to someone, you feel proud that you're building something that they love. And I want my employees to feel that, Sprinklerites to feel that, generally because think about it selfishly. All of us want to be happier in life. I don't use the word happy because happiness is subjective and life is complicated. But whether you're having a worst day or the best day, if I'm talking to you, I can strive to make you happier. I can. And then to try to make you happier, which is how I think love works, you start by being where that person is. Right? You have to communicate that, listening to that person, and then making sure that you're working across everything you can to make their lives better. But it has to start by being where you are and listening to you. And that's what Sprinklr does essentially. We allow you to be where your customers are in all those channels, in all those places. We allow you to listen and understand using 8 layers of artificial intelligence. So we can find those needles in haystacks and find patterns. What are the top issues that you're having, at your hotel in Chicago? Or what are the top issues from an airline that I'm having in Newark, New Jersey? And then go about solving them and actually interacting, doing customer care and marketing across channels in a way that reflects that understanding. And then I can make your life better and make you happier as a customer. And that's our strategy to create the world's most loved company. And from not just the product, but from our sales to success and finance, everybody is aligned to that mission.
Um, the the impetus to make people happier extends not just to your clients but to your employees. Um, how has the pivot to remote work affected that, or were you already distributed and so there hasn't been any change? Regardless, how do you try to keep employees happy at a moment like this when people are not all in or mostly in a single place?
Well, if you want to, I'll tell you what's worked for Sprinklr. Uh, First is to have extremely clear goals when everybody is remote, because you don't
Hmm.
have an opportunity for that always on osmosis driven course correction that happens when you're at work. So you have to pay extra attention to articulating your goals and helping everybody understand how would you know whether you're successful, what are the metrics and all of that. The second key component is really dialing up your communication and being very intentional about it. So my team, my direct team, we have a daily call. When I first started it, people were very skeptical. But we meet at 9:45 every day. It's a 15-minute
Mm.
call that really allows us to have no daylight between concepts and ideas, and how all of us, nothing festers. We have a long meeting every Tuesday. We dialed up our company town halls and our all hands with the pandemic, and the key is to be very intentional about communication. because it's very easy to get sucked into your day and you're not meeting someone for lunch or walking by their office. We have to be very intentional. And lastly, something that helped us uniquely in Sprinkler is we always believe that you can't separate 9 to 5 and 5 to 9, your life at work and the life outside of it. So we had this concept that we call integrated living, which freely and openly encourage people to bring their whole self to work. And so with a culture where people weren't drawing those boundaries as hard as they do in some other companies, and especially when you're remote and going through this, it's so important to understand that these things bleed into each other. You're on a call and your pet's gonna bark or your toddler is gonna be in the room, and you don't put up with it. You actually embrace it. It's such a beautiful thing to see these other people who are in each employee's life and to talk about it.
Um, Tell me more about its integrated workplace. Did you say integrated?
Yeah, I mean, it's a integrated living is how
Integrated
I
living.
refer.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is, as I always think, God gives you 24 hours, right? We make up this 9 to 5 and 5 to 9, gives you 7 days. We are the ones that split it up into seven, weekday and weekend. And I think most of your adult life, you're spending your best years of your life. No one's getting younger, right? No one's getting younger. You're spending the best years of your life, after school and before you retire. Best days of every week and the best hours of every day when the sun's out, you're working. I think it's a crime to not enjoy what you do, and so you have to be very intentional about making that happen.
In calls with clients, say, as opposed to calls among colleagues, the 3-year-old who interrupts or the dog that barks, how do you handle that? Is that is the same integrated living?
Yeah, I personally think we should be proud of it. I mean, the dog is real. You have a dog. Your child is real. You have a child, and your work is real. Your clients are real. I don't understand why we have to create so much trouble for ourselves trying to keep them all away from each other. So I tell Sprinklerites, dude, you want to go for a run? Put it on your calendar. In fact, I tell my direct reports, like, I want to see some wellness activity on the calendar. I want you to go for a run because your health is important to me. I want you to meditate if that's what clears your mind. Um, and and because it's important for me that you do well. It's not just important that you do great work. And so when you embrace that, actually, I think it's a beautiful thing.
All right, all right. It's important to me that you do well, and not just do great work. Um, do you have people that you regard as mentors, someone who's helped change the course of your life and whose example you want to live up to?
I do. I got incredibly fortunate with that. So my mentor is someone that, Eric, I'm sure you know, John Chambers, who used to be the CEO of Cisco. And at one point, Cisco was the Amazon, right? It was the largest company in the world. Um, and John's just an incredible leader, incredible human being, and I'm just blessed to be learning from him. And one of the a few people that he's actively mentoring.
Um, Here's a question that I ask a lot of the people who are on this program. Entrepreneurship is a very hard path to choose, and you are well aware of the statistics about the mortality rate among companies, how a vast majority of them don't make it to year 5. And yet you run a company that had a peak valuation since going public of $5 billion. Going public itself is an incredible success story. Looking back over what happened to you and the way you approach your career, how do you answer the question of why you? Why did you succeed when so many others don't?
I don't look at the world that way at all. I've never asked myself why me. I've always asked myself why not me. I
All
mean,
right.
who create these, 100 billion dollar companies and trillion-dollar companies? What do they have on me? So
That
that's the perspective that I start with, and I can tell you, at Sprinkler, Eric, we're only getting started. You sound like 5 billion is a lot. It's only a lot when you go back and look at zero. I go, we're probably 1 to 2% done. I see every company on the planet needing this. I see most companies think of this as the single most strategic thing that they can do and should be doing. Think about how much money you're spending on sales, marketing, advertising, all customer facing stuff. If you're a large company, think about like if you're a CPG, Procter and Gamble or Samsung or Nike or Microsoft. Take all of that, and isn't it obvious to you that we need a new way to do this? How long will we keep doing what we did 20 years ago that way? The heart of this market in front office is the CRM system. That is relational data that you have about your customer, which is about maybe less than a half a percent of the information that's available about you as a human being. And it's not built for unstructured data. And there are no strangers. So you can get that data about your prospects. And there are so many more channels and customers that are all there, and their expectations are so different. So I think the we've completely, the world has changed. On your customers changed, your competition has changed, and you're sitting there with dinosaur infrastructure. Yes, we're a very ambitious company, so I look at it and go, how do we move faster? We're only getting started. I don't mean that lightly. It's so much to build, and it's going to be so beautiful when it's done.
Raji, I love your answer to why me, why not me. That is probably the most entrepreneurial answer anyone could give.
I mean, I'm
Thank you
still
for
someone
being.
can tell me, someone could tell me why not me, but I haven't found a reasonable answer, so I'm going to keep going.
Well, I think it's the fate of every entrepreneur that lots of people tell you why not you, and it's your responsibility to push those
Yeah,
people
but I
aside.
I, I feel like, and we early days of Sprint, like I should show you, when we were really small, we had notebooks made, and the outside the notebook it just said it's written in the stars. Eric, it's not up to me. I can't stop Sprinkler. Our success is so assured. And the way I always think is like, you are going to use a product. The question is when. You are buying stock. It's so obvious. How is it not obvious? You tell me.
Raji, I am going to leave that question for another time. But that is spoken like a true visionary. And I, I just accept my fate that one day I will be using Sprinklr. Um, and when that date comes, we'll have you back on the show. Raji Thomas, thank you for being part of the Human Factor. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for the opportunity. Always fun to talk to you.
Always. This has been the Human Factor. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Brian Cornelius, Emma Gordon, Catherine Minello, and Rose Levy, our producers, without whom this show wouldn't happen. Thank you, and goodbye.